Hello, universe. Good 3:45 in the morning to you. 3:45 in the morning? Fuck. What am I doing? Well, obviously not sleeping in patterns that most adhere to. I have always been a fan of this time of night, this point in the morning. That transition between yesterday and today, the stillest part of the night, is probably my favorite hour and a half, 2 hours of the day. And it's also, oddly enough, when my tinnitus usually is at its best. And like, for instance, now it's at a very minor and yet manageable pierce of frequency. And it's almost like the whole world just gentles down. And in a world filled with so much chaotic buildup, well, I've always been one to appreciate a good 5-minute break to just check in and make sure everything's still okay. In fact, I guess I've spent most of my life trying to figure out why it is that we don't spend more time taking leisure 5-minute breaks to think about life, to wonder about the world, to pursue some thought you had in the shower that after you realize that soap actually is what's causing my itis thing, and that thought goes away for the rest of the day until you have that moment of reflection to say, what have I been forgetting to rethink about? Oh yeah, I was thinking about if you put a disco ball in your shower and then you were putting in a black light and you were taking mushrooms, what song should you play? Okay, top 5 in that circle. Okay, we're not going to go through this. Pause. Unpause. This is where I have to address. I might have reason finally to want to take a podcast down. And only because my boorish behavior is disappointing. I have a way of dominating other people. And it's never been on better display than that conversation I had with Allison. In the sense that I am such an enthusiastic participant in conversation that I can't wait to get to your point before you even get there. It's, I think, a pretty fair description of how boorish my conversational skill set has become. And at least I heard it in the first 5 minutes of the episode. As a matter of fact, as I re-listened to that one, the first time through, all I could hear myself was, I was trying to count how much rudeness on a scale of 1 to 10 my behavior was exhibiting. And once I realized I'm just locked in at 8, 9, 10, there was probably a few moments where I'm a 7 to a 5, but those are the moments where I'm actually directly conversing with Allison about something that I have noticed about her or appreciate about her or whatever. In other words, if Allison's the subject, I had a pretty good handle on keeping the conversation even. But every time Allison wanted to make a point, I was pretty good at telling her what her point was before she even got there. And that is fucking disappointing. I do not enjoy when I am as unhinged and restless in my head as I was, that I couldn't keep my fucking attention on Allison and her thought development without letting mine run it over. So I saw that behavior in myself, and I've listened to that now 3 times, and every time I fucking want to shut it off. But instead of treating this as a moment where I've exposed the real me, which it is, but instead of that being a handicap, or a setback or some level of containment. No, Allison and I have plenty more to talk about, and I have a feeling that I forget how it takes a while to realize that you're cool with something recording you and not thinking about you're being recorded. I don't even think about it anymore. As a matter of fact, I get so distracted in this whole thing. There are times. So once you are willing to talk about anything in any capacity, and that is no longer a hindrance to your voice truly emerging, well, then you become a different presence. You become the real you. Displaying yourself in public as the real you is challenging because you say other people's names. That was another problem. But I've spoken about everyone that I've spoken about before, but I'll say it again. This is not intended for some level of media distribution. This project is always and never, ever anything but personal. And it doesn't mean that it can't be containing the entire populace. I don't give a shit how many people want to participate, but there's no room here for anything other than collective cooperation and inclusion. I would never think of the world as anything other than that. And because of that, I'm very naive when it comes to thinking what other people will do with information that I use freely. Just be a better person. And since my whole life that has worked for me, and I have reason now to think more than ever that the universe has it already figured out for me. In so many ways, I am comfortable believing that by always knowing that I am going to be a part of the best outcomes start happening. And they're not something that is something tangible in your, say, checkbook or life skill attainment quotients. It's how you start to understand all of it swirling together. You're a collective of energetic distribution in every second you're consciously participating in this real world 3D time linear experience. In other words, you can't be anything other than go with the flow. And your flow is all that matters. And I know this sounds like I hate the new agey fucking there's no good way to put this. But when your rhythm of cellular construction combines with the mental availability of your persistence as a soul energetic life form in this universe of unknown quantity, you know it. It's if you have a sixth sense, this is when it kicks in. You understand that the universe is now accessible to you. And it's because you can see how all of the energies that you've created and the energies that reverberates in some sort of echo distribution back at you start to harmonize. If you've been through this, I know you understand what it means to be synced with the universe. And I believe that all you have to do to get synced with the universe is start understanding that the universe is here to give you the best possible outcomes you can have to grow as a person. And so, I took a week off to think about that. No, I didn't. I just made that up this morning. But I'm not making anything up on the spot. This is all stuff that I have really spent the last week trying to source out how it is that I maintain such upbeat and optimistic outlooks against a world filled with fucking disaster. And there's so much wrong on this planet that you have to entertain, or at least not dismiss offhandedly concepts like evil incarnate or some level of malevolent attack force that we are either going to stand up against or we are going to be flattened by. And as dead center as I am in the generation of apathetics who thought we were just kind of here to enjoy some cake and maybe clean up some paper plates at the end of it all, well, turns out there was more to do than just celebrate and make sure that you take that to a trash can on your way out. There was something about the way we were sold, a nation filled with accomplishment, with purpose, with greatness, with exceptionalism. It was a hypnotic lull into a position of, fuck yeah, good time to get born. Did that well. Now, let's win this spelling bee tomorrow and really conquer fourth grade. Or whatever the fuck. I don't even know when you start to buy into the bullshit that lets you drop your guard, or your vigilance isn't about ferreting out the betterment of society, because the betterment of society is here. It's about maintaining. It's about escalating. It's about, wow, MDMA does make life better. Or it is about all of the wrong pursuits. Because what I did with it completely bass-ackwardly is stopped believing long-term goals had value. Because what a world in civilizational ascendancy to me meant, well, it's time for the robots to cook the fucking food and for us to start busting out the finger paints. Isn't that what's next? So if that's what's coming, I'm just going to get a head start. Okay. Yeah, but can I have the finger paints back? Okay. Pause. It is Thursday, which makes this officially the beginning of the third week of recovery from being hit on my bicycle on the corner of 16th and Rice, which sucked because while I'm not wearing that sling anymore, because that thing is awful, but I'm healing rather rapidly, which is awesome. But I broke my collarbone in two severe places and two places that don't really matter. Well, no, one other place that doesn't really matter. There are 3 breaks creating 4 bones. And yeah, so surgery's likely, but I get 6 more weeks of trying to fucking self-congratulate my shoulder for its healing abilities my way to a point where they don't think I need surgery. So that's primary on my mind. What I would like to give myself for Christmas is no fucking surgery. But given that that's really the only outcome that accident is going to create long term is a broken collarbone, I'm fucking lucky. Oh, I'm lucky. So I'm not going to spend more time on this than this moment right here. But I have always treated riding a bicycle on the streets of any city, and it goes to Portland, Oregon, number 1. When I left college, I don't count Middletown bike riding as city bike riding. That was too small a town, but Portland was city bike riding. Seattle was for sure, and Denver is for sure. So in those 3 cities where I have ridden thousands of miles, well, this is the first time that a car has surprised me enough to have to bail. And I've had several incidents with cars that have left me nerve-wracked, but I knew they were coming because I thought it could happen, and then it did. And the margin for error in all of those was always just enough, because I've never suffered an injury other than one time when a car did something surprising, then I did something that shouldn't have been surprising, to only get surprised by, who the fuck put a curb here in the middle of the goddamn street? So, I had one incident in Portland that, again, even in that incident, I got fucking lucky. I was going fast. I had a helmet on that night, and I hit my helmet. But of the 2 times I have now gone down on my bike in urban settings, one I consider my fault, and one I don't. And yet, I can't completely absolve myself of responsibility because I've always believed as a pedalist on a city urban street full of doom, it's just a matter of when you will succumb to the wrong mix of equipment failure or street failure or pedestrian failure or car failure or whatever failure that you, even in accounting for, at some point or another, well, there's karma. I mean, the exposure alone for 55 years. Well, consider that to be 40 years of true cycling. 2 weeks and 1 day ago, was really the first time that I felt like somebody hit me. And the only thing walking away from it I have to improve is the fact that what I do to communicate with drivers in every situation that I consider sketchy is get their eye contact and even then give up on them until they've made the significant move toward me to say they've seen me, whether that be indicating through a wave or doing whatever it is that makes me understand we're consciously communicating because they started it. So as this poor, I don't want to say poor man, I do feel sorry for the guy though. Fuck man, if it was me, I'd fucking feel horrible too. There's some sympathy on my end that I put him in this position. But what happened is, as I have complete right of way, and there is one car that I'm trying to tail, but he gets ahead of me. I can't keep up with him. And there's just enough here that I don't want to be just recklessly speeding behind a car because too many things can pop out at you because somebody's expecting only the car and then all of a sudden there's a car and a bike. So I open my fucking door and that looks like it hurt. I like being very aware of every possibility. So I know this guy has now a gap because I know how far the car behind me is to turn left. And he's looking into the sun. I'm very well aware of this. I've actually moved over 2 streets because I'm so well aware of this. I don't trust the street 2 streets down. I'm on a bike path myself at this position on the street. And so even thinking that he can turn into me, I put my arm up as he is putting his hand up and looks to me as if he waves at me and stops his vehicle. As I then indicate to him, I'm not going to brake, I'm coming straight through. This is all happening in my head. What actually happens is he had put his hand up in front of the sun, then moved it up further to fully block the sun, to look down the street and see no car, and then gunned it across. Like 98% of drivers do. And so as I realize, wait, he's not braking, he's coming at me, I have no choice to either go down under him or bail right into what is a concrete impasse. And of course I bailed right. And the fact that the only thing I have to complain about is this shoulder injury and some damage to my bike. Oh man, I'm a lucky guy. Pause. Pause. Oh, and so he came back to check on me. At first he didn't, but there was actually a valid, very good reason for that. But then, at first, I mean, it wasn't immediate. It was maybe 6 minutes later, which is not nothing because I'd already spoken to several people at that point and declined an ambulance, but to at least 3. And I had some people come out of their apartments. The place that I got hit was right in front of like a church, but across the street's a major apartment building, and I think there's a school just right kitty corner or up the block. So there's tons of activity on this corner. And I mean, I'm getting all kinds of pedestrians walking past me, just going wherever they're going. But I've also got people who came out of their apartments like, hey man, you need some help? Because I haven't really moved because I know my shoulder's fucked up. And every time I try to lift myself up to look at the scenario around me, I'm like, oh, it feels so much better just lie flat down. I'm just going to stay lying down. So the only thing that I needed to make sure of is that somebody could actually come help me, like my sister or whatever, so that I didn't have to spend the money on an ambulance. Sorry, but that's the way it works in America for most of us. And I knew I wasn't hurt, because I kept asking people, am I bleeding anywhere? I mean, do I have a concussion I can't detect? Am I fine? Because I certainly seem fine. And it turns out I was, but I have this fucking broken shoulder now. So, I don't know if I should go exercise today, but this was the day that I targeted as getting back on the cross-country skier because I feel like fucking lethargic. I mean, honestly, the first week, there's not a whole lot you can do. You're fucking limited. And then all of a sudden, if you just keep pushing yourself a little bit, I don't mean to and this is by no means medical advice for any motherfucker on this planet. Do you understand that? Go have your own fucking experience, man, just like I'm having one. But in this experience, when this happened to me at the age of 55, in this tumbling fall into a concrete embankment, going about 16 miles an hour, well, it turns out not to be as bad as I thought it was going to be. So there's that. And I've always been a pretty quick healer, but I've always been the kind of quick healer that then overdoes it and then sets myself back. Since I feel like that's really the vulnerable zone and I'm right smack in the middle of it, part of me says, why don't you just go fucking walk around the block? Or do that 1,000 times. I mean, walking just doesn't feel like exercise. That's the problem. It just feels like lollygagging. But, I mean, and I'm not having a very strong start this morning. I'll say that. For all the ways that I was boorish in the last one, well, count me in on this one too. Oh, pulse. So, the worst part about like having enough time in between these recordings that you actually listen to the first part? Because it really threatens that part where I say, I could just delete this accidentally and then I wouldn't have to fucking have listened to it again. Then I wouldn't have to be so fucking, how am I going to fix this? Because this thing sucks. Oh my God, this is going to be a train wreck. But since that's where I am right now, I just thought I'd share. Pause. Unpause. And no, I still haven't worked out. I haven't actually moved out the bed where I was when I actually, I mean, as motivation goes, I'm not exactly displaying it right now. Pause. As motivation goes? Well, I mean, mine's been in the shitter. Not necessarily in the shitter, but it's been in a holding pattern because I didn't know when the part 2 of the Allison conversation was going to happen, but since now it's Saturday night at 8:33 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, well, this is when it's going to happen. Unbelievable unpause. So yeah, that conversation on Saturday night went down. And it was a good one. It was a great one in certain aspects, and which made it all the more disappointing when, as I went to deal with the stop button, somehow I ended up not saving the recording, and did it immediately. Like, realized it as soon as I had hit the back button on my phone that I just fucked up, and it's bizarre that it happened when I've never made that mistake before. I've never even thought of like those buttons as in play. And yet somehow I did hit that button intentionally and I just deleted the whole recording. And of course, when you include a guest and they take their time out of their day to cooperate in your little playtime endeavors, well, what a huge letdown. So I don't like making mistakes, especially ones that are impactful beyond the scale of my own personal existence. So I'm going to recreate as much as I can the points that were made by going through the topics that were covered between us, because I feel in some ways we were rehashing material that we had discussed over the course of the last 6 months anyhow. So making Allison do it a third time in life? No. Nope. But you'll have to put up with me doing it. And just me. Which is the worst part. Because I deleted that recording. Oh, man. Sometimes my phone and I just feel like there's no hope. And with this podcast having even less hope, well, we're not doing that now. It's too much to get through. Plus, this has already gone far enough off the rails, I believe. Don't you? Well, then I will recreate the numbers 58 through 46, topics that made my sense of humor go away this summer. We'll do that in the next recording. And then the one after that, well, if Allison's still speaking to me, maybe I'll have her back as a guest. Otherwise, well, we'll see how far off the rails that one goes.